Welcome back, runners. Now that Marathon Surface Slam has come to a close and having amassed over 40 hours on the game over the free weekend, I feel I've finally positioned myself in a strong position to share my thoughts on how I feel about the game thus far. This is actually quite a contentious and interesting topic to talk about, more so than pretty much any pre-release period of any game I've played, because rather than the community giving constructive feedback, it feels like there are only two clear groups commenting on the game. These include those that are torn to see every fibre of this game fail, hating on anyone that even whispers an ounce of positivity, and those that will defend the game as if it were their family's honour, refusing to even acknowledge any remote faults with it. The reality of the state of Marathon as it goes into launch isn't this black and white, however, much like anything in the real world. So with that being said, what are my personal thoughts on all of this? Initially, upon launching and playing my first few hours, my reaction was just, this is it? Been so excited for the game for well over a year despite its controversy. After all the time I waited, how could I not enjoy it? So, with that being said, I just kept playing, and playing, and playing, and holy shit, it's been 10 hours, I'm addicted to this game. At a foundational level, once you get beyond the initial learning curve, Marathon is such an incredibly addictive new entry into the extraction shooter genre that scratches in the itch that I didn't even know I had, with every run wanting you to dive in for more. And the world building, in typical Bungie fashion, is unparalleled, but this package does not come without flaw, a couple of which really tested my patience with the game and led me to almost outright turning it off entirely for the final day. With that being said, these are my brutally honest thoughts and takes from what we have seen thus far. Before we get into things, I need to put forward this disclaimer here. Much of the footage throughout this video will not be recorded by me as I've been plagued by performance issues related to my specific chipset. It is not the fault of my system specifically, but a widespread issue being investigated, leading me to barely scrape 50 FPS with drops into the 20s. More on this later. Timestamps for all the topics will be on the timeline and in the description, but we are going to start off this video with the positives, delve into the bads, and then argue the big contentious big ticket topics you've likely all heard. Starting off with the positives, to put it plain and simple, the package we are getting here is just fucking awesome. Anyone familiar with Bungie games will be abundantly aware of how good their gunplay feels. Every weapon you pick up comes with weight. They aren't just reskins of the same thing with a varied fire rate, they feel unique. LMGs feel heavy, assault rifles have the perfect amount of juice to them, and shotguns kick like nothing else. Each and every single weapon has its place and its use. Sure, you can argue that shotguns and snipers feel incredibly overtuned at their respective ranges, but that is how it is supposed to be. You should not be beating a shotgun at point blank range with an LMG, or beating a sniper over 300 meters with a handgun. The animations feel buttery, the power feels just, and you know exactly what to do with what you've just picked up. This all then fluidly transitions into the combat. Whilst many fights can feel short, the majority of them feel like an incredibly tactical push and pull of character abilities, gunplay, and communication. We had a spree at one stage over the play session where my squad kept gunning for algae ponds in Dire Marsh, if you know you know, and just kept holding down the post. This, in my opinion, is where the game starts to become extremely addictive, when you actually start to get on the roll with the loot you've built up over multiple runs. The snowball in power combined with the risk and gamble you take of losing all your gear only adds to the addictive feeling of the game, keeping you thirsty to recapture that feeling of the high over and over and over again. I also find that the enemy AI are the perfect level of difficulty. If you don't give them respect, space, or effort, they will trample you. Then we've got the art direction, which I do have an extensive video on that you should all check out, is by far one of the strongest parts of this game too. It's not for everyone, but I find it breathtaking and so immersive. As for the world building, I love what they've done here. A big concern many had is that the Marathon would not be able to carry any level of meaningful story out in a game that is exclusively multiplayer. One of the many ways they've tackled this are through the codex entries found on items you extract with, many of which to voice and give you a true insight as to what happened in the world before.
And that concludes my town hall presentation. I'll open the floor for audience questions now. Yes, over there. Please introduce yourself.
Sorry, I work near the hauler. I've seen plants from Earth growing all over our excavation sites. Are we just allowing what we brought with us to invade the native ecosystem?
Much like the player, your in-universe character also has no idea what happened here, and you are piecing it together bit by bit as the game goes on. I love this because there is no hand-holding. It is up to you to get the evidence out and discover what took place. The environments that host these items also expand on the mystery, with scratches and prayers written all over walls and huge catastrophic anomalies tearing apart the landscape. As for the social aspect of the game, I think the level of competitiveness is actually exactly what the game needs. This isn't art creators, and it's not trying to be. With that being said, and with majority of games just having everyone shooting on sight, there were still instances I found with players being friendly and tackling challenges together. With one such instance spawning this clip of a baby rook quietly jumping in and joining the rest of us in extraction without any of us initially noticing. Oh, there's a rook here too, I didn't even notice the rook. Hello, rook.
What?
There's a rook here too.
Oh.
Yo, where did you come from?
Yeah, what the fuck? Hello. Alright, GG's boys, I'll see you all in another round, have a good one.
That was so chill, bro.
That's crazy.
The rook.
It's just so many of us who's like, oh yeah, I'll blend.
And blend he did. As much of a blast as I had with the Service Slam, I would be lying to you if I said it was all perfect. Before I get into the gameplay and system-based problems I have, I first want to bring everyone's attention to my largest gripe and the thing that shut me off and made me walk away from the game multiple times. And that is the game's performance. I am aware this is not an issue that affected everyone, with a large portion of players having the game run buttery smooth with no issues at all. So if that's you, feel free to skip over this segment. I, however, am one of the players who was affected by a known issue causing the game to artificially bottleneck itself. For context, I'm running an RTX 3070 Ti, Ryzen 6800H with 16GB of RAM. This in itself accounts for roughly double the performance listed under recommended, not required specs for the game, all for that for it to barely just scrape 50 FPS with lows in the 20s regardless of what settings are turned on, no matter how high or how low they are. Towards the end of testing, I actually discovered that I may as well turn everything up to its absolute highest because dropping down the settings somehow managed to reduce the performance further, with even lower FPS at lower settings and ultra settings just barely hitting that 50 FPS regardless, but at least the game looked pretty. And not only was this in game, even the menus were lagging when switching between them, as you can see here. I can say with full confidence too that this is not the case of my system not being capable or poor configurations, as I've done all the troubleshooting. And a game running on the same, albeit upgraded engine that Destiny 2 runs on should not be achieving over 100 frames less per second than its Tiger engine counterpart. Regular viewers and fans in the channel would know that I had planned a number of videos to put out over the Service Slam weekend ahead of Marathon's release, including live streaming, but none of these were remotely possible due to the choppy, CPU-heavy, GPU-lacking nature of the game systems. This performance is completely unacceptable for a game that has had plenty of time to polish it out and releases in 4 days' time. Aside from my experience attempting to run the game, putting it behind, ignoring it for now, what other concerns do I have? One big one is the new player onboarding experience. Whilst I benefit greatly from new player confusion, with my guides being among the most covered videos on my channel, players should not have to jump over to YouTube just to gather any kind of understanding of how to play this game whatsoever. It is not like Bungie is not aware of this either, with their social team putting up numerous videos ahead of the weekend explaining basic systems that are not covered whatsoever in any form of tutorial in the game. Yes, the game is meant to be hard. Yes, the game is meant to be competitive, but that should not mean locking new players into a frustrating loop of just not understanding anything. The difficulty should come from the challenge of playing the game and weaving the deep systems with each other. You should not be tripping over the systems themselves before you even get a chance to weave them in. In saying that, I will be putting out my definitive new player guide on release for any that are still confused, but Bungie really cannot afford to be turning new players away from the jump. Another gripe I mention here is the lack of duo queue. Initially, I was actually quite opposed to both solo and duo queue altogether because the game is clearly balanced to play in a squad. And whilst I do stand by this still, nothing is more frustrating than when every so often only 2 of you are on and your random teammate decides to load in as a solo in trios, run off and do their own thing. Obviously, every player is entitled to play how they like. If you want to run off and start random arrangements that you'll 100% lose, you do you. But having the option to run without being inherently disadvantaged by your random teammates would be nice. Just a couple of quick fire ones here as well. There were a couple of bugs we came across, one of which involved a loot bag being stuck in the sky, or at least it would have been if it wasn't for Reboot Plus. Mind you, there was slightly my mate's fault involved in this one. Alright, let's go somewhere.
Maintenance. Oh
Yes.
my god, can I jump on this? Oh!
I'm sure nothing negative. Oh! Oh!
I'm inside!
Oh, your box is near!
What the fuck?
Oh my god! Teammate rebooted you
That
at
was
Sky
the worst
2.
thing ever.
The UI itself could do with some minor improvements, although I don't think it is remotely as bad as people are making them out to seem after using it for even a little while. Recon, while strong, should not have less utility than hitting one of those scan towers, because it's your entire kit. Some of the enemy AI may also need some tuning, with them often spotting you from far and through gaps that most keen-eye players wouldn't even be able to pick up on. I understand they are, evil super robot cop AI, the UESC, but it does seem a little bit far-fetched at times. Aside from all of these mostly minor gripes, I've been happy with what we have seen so far. So with that being said, let's also discuss some of the major issues many of the community have with Marathon. Looking beyond and ignoring the whole, I hate how this looks, Roblox game, it looks ugly comments, because that crowd are irrelevant to this conversation and filled with a bunch of highly immature children whom this game isn't targeting anyways. What are the rest of the community screaming about? The first and most prevalent of these relates to the PvP time to kill, with many players claiming it is way too fast. If you're running around with a grey or base green shield, yes, the time to kill does feel very quick. You get lasered down in an instant, have little time to react, but once you start to get a hold of better gear in the purple, blue, or even gold shields, things start to change on that front pretty drastically. These areas that we had access to within the Surface Lamb are intentionally low level, so the gear you run with reflects that. If Bungie do decide to make a change as a response to the feedback, it would be understandable. But I urge them not to make a knee-jerk reaction and only tune it ever so slightly if they do decide to. The next of the problems the public has is regarding the UI and how confusing it is. I did just touch on this, so I won't go too in depth, but you cannot convince me that anyone who has spent more than a few hours with this game can look at this UI and menus and not know what's going on in its entirety. The game has a lot going on, so naturally so will the menus. I cannot comprehend how so many people claim that it is the worst they've ever seen or can't understand a single thing going on. If this topic stays relevant enough, I will make a video describing and going over how everything in the actual UI works and how the menus work, if that's what people want. But for the meantime, if you just spend a little bit of time learning it, even on launch, take some time just to read what's on your screen. I promise you, it's not as complex as it looks at a glance. And the final of the gripes that many players have is that there is not enough PvP. If you want to find players to fight, you will find players to fight. It is true that if you only stick to the point of interest where you spawn at, you likely won't run into them because they don't spawn everyone at one spot. For example, a short little jog to algae ponds and Diremarsh will have you fulfilling your lifelong dreams of recreating the Battle of Stalingrad just about every match. I don't have a lot else to really add to the PvP topic here because on my runs that my squad wanted to just beef with other players, we had no problem finding them. But that could just be a random lucky experience for 40 hours of gameplay by pure coincidence. Who knows? So, with all that being said, what are my final thoughts on the state of the game, and does it have what it takes to succeed? Overall, the foundations that Marathon is built on are incredible. The game is one of the most addictive I've played in years. The music, the art and sound design are among the best in the industry, and the gameplay loop is incredible. I am very happy with what they're building on here, and so long as the other content and plans on release expand on this, I think Bungie is sitting on a goldmine. However, the issues presented need to be addressed if there is any hope of the game continuing to succeed long term or even short term. The current performance on many PCs, including mine, is completely unacceptable and urgently needs to be addressed. A AAA game releasing in 2026 with the financial backing of Sony and 6 extra months of development time on top of its planned release date should under no circumstances be running how it does, regardless of the wide range of PC augments on the market. I do hope the game can pull these things together because once it does, my goodness do we have something special on our hands. As for the channel update, I will be working to get out the guides and start streaming as soon as I can. Whether that means outsourcing the footage or just outright uploading the god-awful frame rate will be determined with time. But for now, all I can leave with you with is that. So, what are all your thoughts on Marathon? What have your personal experiences been? Are you having the performance issues? Are you having fun? Or do you just not outright like it whatsoever? Let me know in the comments. I cannot wait to see you all in the actual launch. As per usual, you've all been incredible. I've been Lorkess. Have a good one. See ya.